Hey everybody, it's Rob, National Fire Radio. I'm here with Pip from the Size Up. Tonight we have a special guest on our show. We have Captain Dallas Cooper from the Houston Fire Department. Dallas, thank you for being here. You
Pleasure.
work Houston Fire Department up at 50s on A shift, and you're the captain there, correct?
Correct. I am.
Awesome. So let's jump into this real quick here. How did you get into the fire service?
I was a little kid when the fire truck came to school, said, I'm going to be a fireman when I grow up. My mom was administrative assistant in Conroe Fire Department under Chief John Cook. So I hung out in the fire station. But before I was even around, my dad was a volunteer. He actually helped founded the EMS service in the town he grew up in. His claim to fame was the first baby being delivered in their brand new ambulance. And then went to high school. Was studying sports medicine in high school. And with that, we interacted with the EMS there and did the one thing a lot of guys do fresh out of high school. I joined the volunteer fire department. And I got bit by the bug and then kind of sucked into EMS full time for 6 years. And just
sounds familiar, right? Rob?
Yeah, rode that
sounds very familiar.
You know, just round and round and round. And
EMS pays in the Northeast. EMS pays. Fire doesn't to start with, right? But then if you stay too long, you have to reverse yourself.
Yeah. So down here, I was working for a private company contracted to a city, and it does not pay. Burnout happened. And the burnout, I didn't recognize it now. I recognize burnout now because it happened to me, but it happened in about year 5 in EMS. And I decided, I'm going to chase my dream, becoming a fireman. And I put myself through fire school on my own here at Texas A&M at the TEACH program. And then within that first year, I got one job with fires, a small department outside the city, and realized that wasn't my gig. Very small town. If you're not from here, you're just somebody, you're not part of the crew, no matter how good you are. And eventually moved to Houston. I started at Houston in September 2003 and been there coming up on 18 years in September.
Houston's been a really cool place for us to interact with. And we got to meet Steve Sangadolce a few years ago from Affordable Drill Towers, worked out of 68s with, and I got to meet Mo Davis and Larry DiCamillo. And then,
was awesome.
People from the rescue and everything else. And it's just been Houston's always been in the paper, so to speak, when you talk about our firehouse journals and stuff like that.
Right.
But never realized how big the department was, how much of a geographic area you all cover, and then just the culture of between engine companies and truck companies, and I mean just a tremendous department with a lot of different things going on. So it's really cool. And so you moved to Houston and just kind of signed up for the test and ended up,
I'm from the Houston area. I grew up around it. I'm in one of those communities that you don't know where Houston starts and begins. I grew up in the Friendswood, Clear Lake area, and it just kind of runs together. And I decided I didn't want to be at the fire department I was at. I didn't like it. I was working part-time in EMS still, and I ran into a friend with Houston. He goes, "We're testing again." And I went down and took the test. First try, got in. I think I was tested in May and we started in September. I mean, I was one of those first-time guys. There aren't a lot of guys that do that. We were doing a mass hiring at the time. That was after the J. Yonke death, the Four Leaf Towers fire. And they were bringing everything up from 3-man staffing on heavy apparatus to 4-man staffing. So they were hiring like crazy. I mean, my class hit the door of the academy. We were back out in 8 weeks and we were at the station.
Yeah, I realized you said that in your bio you sent me that it was a fast track class. Was that because you had been previously employed as a firefighter, or did they just push you guys? You had that training from Texas A&M.
So the fast track was one of two things. Either you had a Texas Commission on Fire Protection certificate, or you had that plus had been a firefighter already. So they grouped you in a class. It was an 8-week class on how we do things here at Houston. You should already know how to be a fireman at this point. And we went to the station. I mean, in the door and out the door. Whereas the long track class is like 14 months, sometimes longer, because they have to do their EMT stuff and all that. And if they go to paramedic training, it's even extended longer. So we weren't one of those academy classes. We're friendly, we all know each other, but some of those classes are very tight. I was class this, but we were it was like going to a training class, for 8 weeks, in the door, back out, and hit the station.
And then your first,
If it makes you feel better, I went for 5 weeks. That was it. It was 5 weeks when I back when I was young. It was 5 weeks.
I had to do 3 months. It was a 3 long months driving every day from Poughkeepsie to Westchester.
Well, my TEACS class was a 9-week class, but it was 7 days a week, and sometimes we went till late at night. You know, they drilled it in you. It was a good class. It was an excellent 9 weeks to learn how to be a fireman. You should have been able to decide right then if that was the job you wanted to do. You know, it really, because they drilled it in you.
So was your like what like you got assigned station 4 when you get out of the academy, but like what was do you remember your first like job and all that stuff as far as like some of the career highlights? Or
4 is where I ended up as a firefighter.
Okay.
I kind of bounced around a little bit trying to find your niche. Houston's huge, like we said, 92 fire stations, 88 engine companies, 50 something ladder. I mean, it's huge, right? I ran into a guy from DC one time who was like, you know, pounding his chest, I'm a DC fireman, you're a Houston fireman. And I said, and then I started telling him about it, and he was just like, oh. I said, yeah, y'all are like a quadrant in our department, you know? Yeah. So I kind of bounced around a little bit. You know, as a station, like I said, during the Yankee hiring phase, when they're hiring, there were tons of rookies, and some of them were in at slow stations. I ended up kind of at a milder, slower station 41. When I was done my rookie phase, they manpowered me to 31s. Then I transferred to 60s. I put in and asked to go to 60s, which was the Southwest side where I stayed for a little bit. And then 4s is where I stayed the most of my career as a pipeman. So you kind of find that in Houston, guys get bounced around, and they also get manpowered a lot. They get shuffled when, you know, if you don't put in for something and someone bumps you out of that spot, you're not locked in. You might go, you know, until you find your niche, you know, where you want to be. And that's what a lot of guys do. They don't lock it down because they're trying to get somewhere specific, you know.
Yeah. Some of the guys were talking about staying on the ambulance just to make sure they got a good spot in the station that they were at. I know Steve was kind of talking about like how he went and like, you know, did certain things to make sure that because he wanted to stay where
yeah. There's some guys you'll do something like so that you don't. I mean, you can't control the transfer office. That's a total separate entity. If they decide to move you and they need you and you're extra, you know, they're going to move you. But yeah, you'll pull stuff. You decide this station I want to be at. Kind of make the crew want you to stay more. You know, kind of.
Yeah.
And you like Houston shoes. There's some guys do it to where they live. I live an hour from Houston. I drive an hour, which some places that doesn't sound like a lot, but I work on the northwest side, which is literally a straight shot from where I live. But some guys, they base where they work because of the size of the city. I mean, if you ever look at a map and you see the word Houston, just go like this, and that's Houston.
Yeah.
Now, are you when you're saying like because people could be listening to and it's spread out? So there's Houston, like the city, right? And then what surrounds the city? Let's say like the high-rise district or whatever you want to call it. Because I have no
high-rise districts.
5?
Yeah, we have basically 5 high-rise districts. You have downtown, Galleria, Med Center, Southwest Houston, the Energy Corridor. Actually, we have 6. Midtown's kind of one. So yeah, we have 6. So there's Midtown, Uptown, Downtown, East End, North Side. We have Kingwood, the livable forest, which you actually leave the city of Houston, go through another town and get to because they jumped over a city and annexed something for that tax grab. You know, it's hard until you like to come. I'll put it this way: I have friends that come to Houston, and I said, you got to get a rental car, and they're like, no, we'll do this. I go, no, we're not a walking city. We're not, you know, you can Uber, but your Uber in one day could cost more than your rental car for a week, you know? So it's just a crazy city. I love working in it. It's super diverse. We got it all, and you could have it all in your district. That's how, because we don't have zoning laws. So, you know,
so anything could be anywhere pretty much.
Yeah. Like in my, you know, that house that down the street could actually be a manufacturing facility or an auto shop, you know, right in the middle of a neighborhood, you know, so it's a very diverse city to work in as a fireman. You know, and a lot of guys can get locked in. Some of them are small communities, mom and pop residential type things, but you know, it's very, very, very cool.
I think that's one of the things too, like, you know, in comparison, like New York City is 300 and something, I think 300 square miles. And I think the city of Houston, 600, well, I looked it up, 671 square miles. So like when you talk about that land, like it is a lot of area to cover. And actually when we went down and we popped into 68s. I was surprised the distance that they had to travel
Yeah.
before, like, and I was like, where's the other companies? Like, aren't we gonna? And Mo was like, oh, they'll be here in a little bit. And I
Yeah.
was like, huh. But it was quite, like, the coverage area was quite large for
Yeah.
the station.
Yeah. So
So
like when I was a pipeman at Station 4, we were the last kind of outpost. We were the city, we ran the city limits, and then it was a volunteer duty crew paid department that covered us. But we would be, if we made fires in a certain way, well, I'll tell you this way. If we made fires at Station 96, it was a 20-minute response for us as the second engine. And
yeah,
that's, you know, in a big municipal city, that's pretty.
That's unheard of in my world.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
just say, like, you know what I mean? Like, Rob, where we are, it's again, there could be 20-minute responses, but it's not because it's the same department that has a 20-minute response to
Right.
your
Right.
second due, you know?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
then if we made a response right in our territory around our station, you know, the next two stations were right on top of us. But that's the way the city is. They annexed that area up there, Willowbrook. Well, you got to go 20 minutes some days because that's traffic. You know, the time of day, it may take you that long to get up there. But if you got to run down to 67 Station 4, you're there in 5 minutes, if less.
Yeah. So what were some of the, like, you know, like when you got into and you finally arrived in Houston, like, what was it that hooked you in there? Was it like, did you go like first fire kind of thing? Like you were just like, oh yeah, this is awesome, that high? Or was there, like, did you ever go to the truck side or?
So in Houston, we don't have you're not, well, for the most part, if you're at a house that has a truck, the guys rotate between it. Some have dedicated truck guys, and it's usually a senior man that the senior captain on the truck's like, that's my truck guy every day. He's my cut guy or my punch through guy. But most stations with a truck, and most stations have trucks, have ambulances. So you do your day on the ambulance, your days on the engine, your days on the truck. You know, you kind of rotate around. But what drew me to Houston after I decided to be a fireman, I worked for Rosenberg Fire Department, decided that wasn't for me. Small country department, 2 stations. If you're not from there, you're just kind of not part of the crew. I decided I wanted more. Houston had more opportunity for advancement. When I interviewed at Rosenberg, they told me immediately, if this is a department you want to be an officer in or advance in, this isn't it, because we've already picked out and we know who will be in that progression. You know, and I was just like, I just want to be a fireman. I just want to be a firefighter. That was it. You know, you're young out of the fire academy, right? And so Houston had the opportunity for advancement. I mean, once you promoted to emergency engineer operator, then you can go stay in suppression. You can go over to arson. You can go to inspections. You know, you have that bridge to move into other things. That was a big thing. One, to make the fires. You know, when you're in a small country town, you're not, hay bale fires and cotton bale fires get old real fast, you know. And so I wanted
We're not sure what those are, by the way. We don't really. Maybe Rob does a little more than I do, but
I grew up on a dairy farm, so I very much know what
okay, so yeah,
hay bale is. But
yeah, well, I'll send you some pictures.
yeah.
The opportunity for advancement, the opportunity to better yourself in the job was there. I mean, that was it. In Houston, if you don't become a good firefighter in Houston, you've chosen not to become a good firefighter in Houston. You've not surrounded yourself with the right people at the right stations. And let me tell you, now as a captain and working overtime and when you work overtime, you can work anywhere in the city. I see that more than I ever have. You know, as a firefighter, I didn't do it because I was worried about my job. I wasn't worried about if he knew his job or not. But as a captain, I have seen it. I'll text buddies. I'm like, you're not going to believe what just happened on the call. And I tell them, they're like, well, I do, but no, I don't, you know, at the same time. So Houston was the draw for advancement. And the big thing about Houston back then was you came to Houston, you stayed at Houston, and you retired really well because we had a great pension. We didn't make crap for pay, but our pension at that time, which that's a whole nother podcast.
That's been, I was going to say too, because like we met on social media, I guess through 555. I'm not, that would be my imagination, right? Maybe you remember.
I got injured and I came back to working out and trying to get back into it. And I needed something better, what I had been doing. And you gave your video and in the video, it said like, there's no biceps on the fire ground.
There's no bicep curls. New York Times video, there's no bicep curls in the fire ground.
And then you talked about the heart disease rate, right? And that got me. That's when I did a little quick video about being injured using CrossFit to get back in the game of thing. And I quoted you a few times in that, and then I think I sent it to you, and you've hung around.
But no, but since then I've been watching you post about what's going on in Houston when it comes to a labor end.
Yeah.
Because even though I've been pigeonholed as the fitness guy in the fire service, like there's 8 million other sides of the fire service than fitness.
Yeah.
And hearing all about what goes on in Houston, I mean, people wouldn't know that if you weren't posting about it. So
Yeah.
And I try not to get caught in it. My mom is real big every now and then, be like, "Can you post something happy for once?" And I'm like,
no, but you get caught up because again, it's another part of our job or our career. If you're a career firefighter, they're passionate about it. It's the same as the volunteer end, that they're passionate about being volunteers. We're passionate about our career and our what we signed up for, I guess is an easy way to put it. You know what I mean? When it comes to the job and the benefits. So you've been a great proponent of that.
Which volunteers have that job and benefits, and they're worried about it through their full-time job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to us, it's a little different. This is our full-time job, because I've heard them, well, you signed up for it. Yeah, you're right. But what do you do for a living? I ask them, and they tell me, I go, don't you expect certain things after your tenure here? And they're like, well, you got a point. So
I mean, and it's something they've messed with you guys about more than they've probably with Rob and I with what we've had at work. So
and I've always felt too is that the other end of, because I've explained this to a couple of people who aren't career firefighters, but they're volunteers, or they just have a different outlook. And I was like, listen, like, you get me for that 24 hours that I'm in that station unconditionally. And just like parents have unconditional love for their kids, like I have an unconditional response for you, and that doesn't ever end. And that means that I do things that I'm not supposed to do, not because I'm breaking the rules, but just there's going to be a time where I end up, sucking some smoke, or like we walk into something and it's just like we're getting exposed to bad things that's having its effect on our bodies. So the only thing I ask for you is, if I'm going to give you that unconditional experience, take care of me on the back end when I'm old and broken and all this stuff finally comes knocking on the door and says, hey, because it's a reality.
It's a reality. And I think opposed to when I got in years ago, it kind of feels more inevitable now. I don't know if that's a maturity thing, listening to these guys talk, more as opposed to when I was younger. I think I was 25, 26 when I started Houston. So I wasn't listening to that. And that culture was different. You didn't decon your gear and wash your hoods and, scrub the inside of your helmet. And you didn't do a lot of that, the other day, we made a fire on a debit day. That's something extra we do here. And the chief, before I came out and I went to talk to command, and I started peeling stuff off, and he said, stop. He goes, go to the back of the pumper, decon, get sprayed down and undressed, and then come back. And I went, okay. And so walked over, and the EO was standing there and took the hose to me. I'm like, bro, this is 11 o'clock in the morning. My gear's soaked now. And he was like, he goes, your gear's cleaner. It's not clean, but it's cleaner. I said, okay. So I took it off, went back, and I said, okay, we're overhauling. The chief goes, no, y'all load up on the pumper, go back to station, take showers, get cleaned up. Engine 3 didn't do anything. They're going to come forward and overhaul this fire. You've already been in the ideal age too long. And I was just going like, oh. But after I thought about it, I'm like, this makes sense now. But when I was younger, I'd be like, this is our fire, we're going to overhaul it. So,
it's one of the things that I learned going to, like I'm part of the 3rd district here in New York for the union. And like, there were not a lot of guys who were getting injured on the job from fires, or these crazy things where they were like, well, he was so heroic when he was saving little Susie, and then this happened and now he's hurt and the city's jerking him around. There was so many times where like oh yeah, like we got one guy out on an injury right now. He blew out his back taking a fan out of the ladder truck. Another guy was on an EMS call and he blew his back out, and then so next department's like, yep, we were on a lift assist, and so and so's down and out, and he's probably going to retire. And I remember just one day being like, so like the fires may kill me, but what I'm hearing is these other injuries are probably like I could blow my shoulder out and that would end my career.
Yeah, like I was walking to my truck across the back parking lot. We pulled these bushes up. We got tired of looking at them, and we pulled these bushes up, and the rain had washed out that area, and I tore my ankle up, twisted it, rolled it. All the guys saw it. It was like one of those big, oh my God moments. And that was years ago, but now there'll be days I'm just hobbling around a little bit because it just bothers me. Didn't do it in a fire, Didn't do anything crazy. Did it walking to my truck on the job, and it was an on the work injury, but I'm stuck with it, so.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things too, that like when I look at my journey through even meeting you on social media, like meeting all these different people, you see these things, and like Rob, you said, you're hearing these reports of people, and now we're seeing them. And even what you said, like coming out and getting sprayed down after a fire. Look, my department's not there yet. We're definitely not there. However, we are leaps and bounds from where when I started. We started in the same year and the same age. Trust me, when I started, we were not even washing gear. I mean, not anywhere near that. We had a gear washer, but no one used it. Whereas now I feel like I've changed, gone into my spare turnout gear more in the past year and a half, let's just say, than I have in my entire 17-year career.
Yeah. And they're working. We now have 2 hoods, and the union, I don't know who's doing it. The union's doing it. Our local or the city, but we're about to get second coats and gloves, which gloves have always been my complaint. The nasty, heavy gloves, wet gloves. The coat, I felt like I'm out there, you're wringing it out, like trying to get it. But yeah, I was like, it's crazy, the advancement, and it seems to be happening fast. But what that one chief did at that fire, I made the fire the other day. That didn't happen. We went and overhauled. I made 2 before that. That didn't happen. I mean, it's weird. That was a test model in Houston that some districts did, and I think he's the only district that still does it. But I'm telling you, I felt 100% better the rest of that shift. That fire was at 11 in the morning. That if I had stayed and had to overhaul that fire in my gear, still taking in the toxins and all that. I mean, I was like ready to go. And plus, when we got back, one of the restaurants had a catered lunch order canceled, and it was sitting there waiting for us. So
that's a win and a half.
Oh yeah. I was like, this is great.
It's the best overtime
ever. Every day.
I will take a detail here whenever you guys are offering it fires and free food and getting decon. Like,
So you talked really quickly about in your bio about being the EO and driving the engine, but you just minus the fact that the captains I drove were not up to par, as Al put it. But the crews that you worked with made being that engine operator a blast.
Right.
Can you kind of touch on that a little bit, because I've dealt with the less than stellar management, but definitely had the back step make it worth it, because I've always said like it's a lot easier while the inmates are working against the warden because they have nothing but time.
Yeah. So like when you first get promoted EO in Houston, you go from being like the greatest fireman in the world to the bottom of the barrel because you go drive an ambulance. You go in an ambulance and my first year in an ambulance, it was horrible, I'll admit. But then I went and I found this fun crew to work with. And even though we were getting on the ambulance running, they made it fun, and then once you've done a few years on the ambulance, you move over to an engine. You can start putting in to try to transfer to an engine. And I put in for an engine that I know nobody wanted to drive this guy because I knew I would get it. And after like the first day, I'm like, oh, now I know no one wants to drive this. But the crew was so fun. And I kind of turned their spirits around a little bit, because I'll admit it, I stood up to the guy. I had no problem telling him, no, you're wrong. Just because you're the captain doesn't mean you're right. These are the rules. You don't get to make the rules, even though you think you do. We still have to be safe. And all. And I'll put the first one transferred after 4 months. I just kept bucking him every chance I got, not in an insubordinate way or anything like that. I was pushing it a few times. I will admit, but the guys responded to that somebody was there to stand up for them, and then they just became like family. I didn't know a single person in that station. I take that back. I didn't know anybody on that shift when I got there, because 50s was in my district when I was at 4. So I knew a bunch of the crews there. And so, but I knew other shifts, and all the captains, one captain was like, you're driving that guy, good luck. And the other one was like, but man, hopefully you can turn this around. These guys are just beat down. And I did. I started, just showing appreciation. They had an EO that would work with them. I got it. If they were cleaning, I cleaned. I didn't sit on the couch. The guys they'd had before sat on the couch. And they just made it. And then that guy left. We had some temporary guys, a couple of which were friends of mine, which made it kind of fun, but that's weird, when your buddies, now your boss a little bit.
Buddy to boss is always an interesting experience.
Yeah. But we had such good friendships that we made it work, knowing also it was a temporary thing. And the crews just really, they took to me and I took to them. And, I appreciated everything they did. I let them know they were always appreciated. You know, if they had a problem, they came to me and I helped talk through it. But there was always laughter in the back of that fire truck. I made sure of it. They made sure of it. It made it fun. They wanted to do the job. They knew if we were second due, I was going to be running on that first due engine like it was nothing. If we were third, I was going to be pushing that. I was going to get them there, put them on the fire. I'm not, and I don't like to brag myself much, but one of the other chauffeurs told me at one time, he goes, "Man, I'm glad you're the captain now. I don't have to worry about you being on my tailboard coming down the road." So it just, they made it fun. They made what the fire service should be.
I think that's the best part of it too. Is like when, like you kind of said, like if there's one person, whether it's the leader or anyone else that doesn't fit, but everybody else is together, that's what it's all about, right?
Right.
Like you can overcome anything together,
Yeah.
kind of in the fire service.
And
right?
they were some of the first crews that really appreciated me. That I like talked about my personal life a lot and stuff like that, and open up to for. I mean, as a pipeman and all, I was at a big house. We had 12 guys there, a chief, 2 officers, 4 drivers, and then the crew. So you had you still had your little cliques, right? But this was some of the first crews that we felt as one, and came together, minus the officers.
Because I think it's a great segue. You talked about opening up to some of the crews on a personal level, and one of the other reasons that we're here today is to kind of discuss some of the things you have in your personal life that you got going on, and one of those being that you're gay, and
right.
you've had to walk through this world of the fire service, and like what was that? What is that like currently today? What was it like back then? Because I can't imagine being in your shoes,
yeah. So
and having all that there.
Yeah. So like I said, I'll start back. I'll even go further back to how my life a little bit before. I came out to my parents at 16. So I graduated high school in 96. That was in 94. To a very conservative Christian mother. My dad was conservative, but he was a little more laid back country cowboy kind of guy and all. And I came out. So now I had my years of high school that I had to deal with, waiting to get out of the house. The rules my mother put on me, oh my gosh, the questions she would ask me. I mean, I tell her some of them now, and she's just like, I can't believe I asked my son that, oh my gosh.
So you came, just to go back too, because you didn't tell me this. We only talked about Big Dallas and Little Dallas when I finally had to confirm your name was Dallas. That wasn't just your social media name, because I was scared enough to ask that question, much less anything else. But like really, like Rob, I was literally like, dude, your name is Dallas for real?
And it was like quiet, kind of the other end of the phone, like.
Yeah, like I'm like, for real, like your name is Dallas. But so you graduated high school in 96, so did I. That wasn't something even in New Jersey anyone was doing. So that alone, if you even want to get into that a little bit more, that was a different time.
It was very different. I just lost a cousin to AIDS. That was a big deal. I can remember the things my grandparents would say, like, don't touch Andy, don't hug Andy. So that was a big deal. I never knew anybody who was gay, so that was really messing my mother up, because I had never been exposed. But somewhere deep inside, I knew there was something about me that wasn't like the guy sitting next to me, in high school. And I did. I came out. It was a rough graduate. Man, those years were rough. They were really rough on me and my family. Me and my mother got very divided at times. To the point once I left home, I moved out and all, I'd come over for lunch or dinner and she'd say something, I'd out the door, my dad would be like, "Damn it, Mary," because he's trying to build a family together. But
I like that you can just say it now too. Like you're like, this is what happened.
Yeah. Oh, we look back. I'll tell you a funny story and I'll come on with it. So me and my mom were button heads like nothing at all. And I wish I had a picture of this to show you guys, because you probably both flip out of your chair. So I was going to get back at mom, right? It's Christmas family photos for the church directory, or taken at Christmas for the following year. And that's when they get your family photo. I was pale, besides this pink that's happening now. I was pale. I wore all black. I went out and I had my hair dyed platinum and gold, spiked. And I got out of the car at the church parking lot and I looked at my mom. I was like, "What are you going to do now?" And she's like, "We're going to take the picture," And I stood in the back of that picture. I wish I had it here because it's hilarious. I show it to people and they're like, where are you? Oh my God, because I mean, I was all like, this and, I'm hanging out at the clubs and partying all the time, doing stuff you're not supposed to. And I was in my early 20s at that point. And I mean, we still have that picture. We every now and then, my sister likes to post it on like Siblings Day or something, it just.
I'll make sure to friend her.
Wow.
I can do that.
Rob, I'll go find it when this is over and I'll send it to both of you.
Thank you.
Now we need to see that.
Oh, mother had her big old, hair, and dad was in his three-piece suit, and my sisters over there like, check this shit out.
This guy's the best. I can do anything I want at this point.
Yeah. So came out at 16. It was kind of a rough life. Joined the fire service in town. Still, I lived at home. I graduated high school, joined the volunteer fire department. That's the first place I actually experienced homophobia in the fire service. Like the first week I was there, they had a meeting because they had they had one of their few fires of the year in town, and they were doing their post-mortem. Well, at the time, I remember what they call it. It's post-mortem now. And this one dude just loved to go on because it was a gay couple. The house had caught fire during a domestic, and one of them pulled the guy out and he was like in his underwear, and the other one I think was naked. And this guy just kept talking about, oh, the Fruit Loop fire. We got the Fruit Loops out. And I'm just sitting in the room like this, and there's all the awkward laughter and like, and they're kind of like, and this guy was assistant chief too of the volunteers. And so they were kind of, you could tell there were people who would laugh like, ha, ha, ha. And then there were people like, hey, bro, there was like 4 or 5 of us that were new. We were wanting to join. And this was like our second or third time there. They had a meeting, volunteer fire department has a meeting every Sunday. Yeah. And I was just like thrown off by this. Like, I realized that was one point that I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this job, I'm just going to do this job, and I'm not going to be able to ever be who I am, me as a person. But I didn't stay there long. I ended up wanting to move. I didn't want to live in my small town. I was done with it. I mean, it just wasn't the place for me. So I moved into Houston, and I moved into the Montrose. The Montrose is Houston. It's pretty much, it's like Chelsea in New York, Castro in San Francisco. We have the Montrose, and I moved into it. And I actually lived in the Montrose up until I moved here in College Station 8 years ago. I lived in it, loved the neighborhood. It was a great, beautiful. If you're ever in Houston, some of the best food you can go get. You come back, make Mo Davis take you to Nico's in the Montrose. It's some of the best Greek food there is. So, but
I'm writing that down too. I didn't even get invited on the NFR trip there, but I'm writing that down because if I do get
y'all make it there, come. It's my treat. So yeah, I got out, and then I went full time into EMS. But the funny thing about going back to EMS was a lot of the guys that worked at the place I was at, I went to high school with, and they knew me, and so they were like, "Oh, it's Dallas," and they knew about me. So that was an easy 6 years, right? So I did that, and then decided to be a fireman, or decided to chase my dream of being a firefighter. And during that time in EMS, I was who I was. I mean, if I came in the night before, they're like, "You've been at the club all night." I'm like, "No, I'm not." And they're like, "There's confetti stuck to your neck," and I'm like, "Oh, sorry," because you go out and come dragging in the next day. It was a ragtag group of people, but we took each other for what we were worth and loved each other for what we were worth. No matter what. So
I feel like working EMS too, and Rob can probably kind of agree with this as we all can, when it comes to the 3 services like EMS, fire, police, whether you're separate, you're together, EMS talks about themselves being like the stepchild of the other 2, let's say, or whatever you want to call whatever it is. However, when it comes to being accepting of everyone and who they are and whatever you have going on in your life, that's a highlight of EMS. Because when I worked EMS, there was nothing. You know what I mean? Black, white, red, homosexual, not, whatever you want to be. A lot of stuff in your face, whatever color hair you came in with that night. You were just getting on the ambulance with me.
Yeah. And that was one of the first places that I ever had someone stand up for me because I was gay to another coworker. And it happened, and this guy had a problem. And we'll come back to him later. But he ended up in my fire academy class in Houston. And so it was like, "Oh, hey." And he was like, "Oh, hey."
It's you.
He kind of had a problem with it. And they were like, no, dude, if you got a problem, go down the road. You know, it's Dallas. It's not
Yeah.
anything.
It's
You know.
funny. Like growing up in rural Sullivan County, I had the opportunity when I was in high school to work for an ambulance company in Monticello, and I had one of my EMT partners as a paramedic, and he was gay, and I was like, all right, that's no big deal. And Darren certainly took an opportunity or two to mess with me, especially in front of my mother. But like once I got to work with him, like I was like, all right, this is cool, like. And I remember going back to the firehouse, and one of the guys saying something to me. He's like, "Oh, I saw you in the ambulance." He used disparaging term towards Darren. I was like, "Oh yeah, it's whatever." And he's like, "Oh," and it kept going on. I was like, "Listen, like, he's a solid guy. Like, if I was dying, that's who I definitely want, and if you were dying, you'd want him there too." Like, I remember like you talked about that nervous laughter at first, and like having that, and like being like, oh, like I don't know what to do with this. This is awkward. But
Yeah.
then once I said something, the rest of the guys in the firehouse were like, yeah, why don't we drop that? Like, and it like I think sometimes it really does take somebody saying something. There was that show that used to be on TV where they would like put people in awkward situations, and
Oh,
What
yeah, I
would
know
you
what you're
do?
talking about.
What would you
what
do?
would you do?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
I thought I was on an episode of it one day here at home because there was a guy who was, I don't know, he was, if I had stereotyped him, he definitely looked like a drunk homeless guy, but he was bitching about like the natural natty ice or whatever that was supposed to be 2 for $5, and then he started picking on the guy. He was Pakistani, and he was like, "Oh, you're the reason we have 9/11," and he went on this whole thing, and I just sat there listening to it and looking at the other people, and I finally said, "Hey, shut up! Like
Yeah,
nobody wants to hear you."
yeah.
Like, and I was like, and I'm pretty sure if you keep going at it, like I'm gonna say something outside with you, and nobody's gonna care what
Yeah,
happens from that point forward. So just shush.
yeah.
And he dropped it, and he actually left the food and stuff, and say la vie. And the
Well,
guy comped me my coffee, so that was even better. But
yeah.
The
it
free
takes
coffee is the
one,
win right there. Like,
yeah. That's the golden repo. But no, like at the end of the day, like it takes somebody to say something to.
yeah,
So, but
I
anyway,
mean,
going back into it, like you're experiencing all these things. I mean, going back to what you said about your first department and thinking to yourself that you're gonna have to like just keep this and not be yourself around these people, like that is a tremendous weight of like I cannot imagine. I'll just call it like a weight of emotion that had to, because I like it's like me trying not to tell people I'm a firefighter, and they're like, what do you do? What do you do? And I'm like, come around and I'll be like, I work in loss mitigation. Like,
yeah, yeah. But it was funny. So I made a really good friend and right off the bat, and she was so the department had two sides, fire and EMS, and you could either belong to one, the other, or both. And I belonged to both. And I met a friend named Melissa Kendrick, and we're still friends to this day. And it's like we didn't even tell each other. She didn't tell me she was a lesbian. I didn't tell her I was gay. We just went like this. And that once I kind of started hanging out with her, people started to know, but she would tell people what to do and where to go in a heartbeat. And that was kind of my saving grace. I'm here. And once they also realized, like, real quick, just like anything, I'm here to do a job. If we become friends in the meantime, volunteer fire departments are a little different. They have different social and stuff like that. Nobody really ever messed with me. You would hear things, they would intentionally tell stories in front of you, stuff like that. But the funny part was a lot of the volunteers that were there were volunteers from when my dad was in high school, who were mom and dads then, and now they're grandparents, so they were still volunteers. And they knew me and my family, and they made it real quick that this is a non-issue. But I still had those
thank
feelings.
God.
Like,
Yeah.
I had to niche out, like, okay, I'm the only person in the station. All right, there's Melissa, there's Lisa. Okay, I can hang out with them today. Or I'm in the station and, oh, Dan's here. And Dan was the assistant chief. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to the house for the day. So there was still that side, that heavy burden, and they would some of them would take their opportunities for a pop shot every now and then and say stuff. But for the most part, I just had to like find my niche. But there was still, yes, yeah. It felt, because I was a young man and I was, I out of high school, and I'm now like starting to live life and explore. But when I come home and I go do what I want to do, because I wanted to be a fireman, right, a firefighter, and then it was like, it was like, just be a firefighter. We don't be anything else. And I was
Right.
like, I don't know what that means, but okay.
And you said I don't know if I think you texted us or if it was in the it was in your bio here, but like you EMS very comfortable to work in, like and we kind of touched on that. Like everybody
Yeah.
can come into EMS, and because like I always say, like there's strong bonds between people, but that person that you work alongside of in that truck is usually like you've just experienced stuff with them
Yeah.
that nobody else can. Even my best friend, like I mean, well, my one best friend's a paramedic who I work with, but like if it's outside of EMS, like you don't have that kind of bond
No.
with somebody that you're, especially when you're getting the beat down
Right.
that comes with EMS.
Oh yeah.
But now, so like you're out, but then like when you went back into the fire department, you were not so forthcoming, or not. I don't want to say forthcoming, but like
You went
you
back
held that.
in, and it was the
Oh
text
Yeah.
message because I was
Yeah,
like, jump
okay.
back. Wait a minute. I didn't know you could do that. Like I was unaware that could be possible, right?
yeah.
In a way,
So
like
I went to fire school at Teeks, and like I said, it was an indoor, out the door thing. I lived with my grandmother at the time. A lot of the guys lived on, so there wasn't a great bond. So I didn't have to worry about anything then. We were there for one thing only, one thing, that was school, right? On the weekends, I picked up and went back home and would work. So I didn't hang out with these guys. They didn't know me. So then I came out and I get my first firefighting job, and um, that's with Rosenberg Fire Department. Now, some of the guys that worked there worked on a duty crew over another department with some of the guys from the EMS side. Well, after like my first month there, one of the guys were out back doing, I think we're filling water extinguishers or something. And one of the guys goes, "Hey, I met a friend of yours last night." And I went, "Oh, really? Who?" He goes, "Well, I was at a meet at my other job in Katy." And I'm, "Oh, who?" And he told me who, and he goes, "Yeah, he said you're gay." And I went, I just did the whole, that's what he said. I was his wife's partner on the ambulance. Me and her is now divorced. But I was like, really, in my mind, it's like going, I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, "Well, I don't think you'll have any problems here. There've been some other gay individuals who have worked for the city, but you probably just need to keep all that to yourself, and just do what you're a rookie. You just do what you're asked to do, and just kind of." He goes, and he goes, this is a small, and it was a country. I mean, I think there was a sell lot for livestock in our town, if I remember correctly, and it wasn't. I just remember that feeling that I can see right now, telling y'all this story, where we were standing in that fire station, and I can like look down, and I can feel like I see myself, just that head hung down, shoulders down, like that's what he told you. I was his wife's partner on the ambulance at times, and he worked part-time there, the guy that told this, and that was it. He didn't take anything out, like show up on time, loves to learn, loves
good EMT, good medic, nothing, just you're gay.
But employee, that. And I can remember that. Sitting here, I can remember, I can see where I was at. And it was in that moment, that was one of the first times. I mean, people talk about us, right? People talk about people, right?
Yeah.
That was really a poignant moment in my life. And I want to say I was probably 24 at the time, that I felt really sad about being a gay man. I don't know why. I'd had kind of some rough times, but everything had been so good, so fun, life, my job was fun. And I chased my dream to be a firefighter. I got it. And that was it. And I remember feeling crushed. It wanting to shift to end. And we worked a weird schedule out there where you came to work a lot.
With the same people, probably. Like,
yeah.
Like, this guy's my brother, but he just told
yeah.
me something that's not very nice about me.
So I just kind of chilled, and I just shut the door on who I was. Some other people worked over there, so I would hear things behind my back. I kind of had an old country captain. I'll tell you how country is. One day he told me, "Get in the truck. We got to go somewhere." I was like, "All right, we got a call." Well, we got in the booster to go fix the fence that a truck run through, and his cows were getting out. So
yeah.
We gotta go, rookie. Let's go.
He pulls up and he goes, "You know how to fence?" And I was like with a sword, He goes, and he pulled out from the back of the truck, because he had it in his truck. And he did teach me how to splice live wire, and I probably could figure it out again today, which is a pretty neat skill if you ever fix something. But yeah, but we didn't talk the whole ride there. We didn't talk the whole ride back, and yeah, it was very weird just having to shut that door on who I was or who I was growing to be, becoming comfortable with myself. And I even had a partner at the time. You know, we'd been together a couple of years at that point. We had separated since then and both moved our separate ways. But yeah, and I'd come home and I remember he was like, "How was it?" You know, because he was excited. I had my dream, right? And I'd be like, it's okay. You know, always sent to fill in at the other station. The other station had a lieutenant and a firefighter, and the lieutenant stayed in his room all day. I sent him over there. So it was really weird.
So do you think a lot of that is from, you know, when it was as opposed to now, let's say, like less, because if you think about when that was, I'm not standing up for them, but
no, that was in 02.
02. So
20
years ago. I mean, there's a big change, right? Yeah. So then was it a lot of their, I want to say like uneducation or just the unexposure?
I think it was the unexposure. A lot of those guys lived in that town or around it. I mean, small country town, and that was it. You know, a lot of them were the hardcore German, Polak, Catholic upbringing in that town. I had that's some of the area. Actually, my mom, take it back. My grandparents and great grandparents settled that area as immigrants. They came into that area and settled in Texas. So it was still very, like when we go to family reunions, I'm like, I stick out like a sore thumb because I don't have a cowboy hat and a starched white shirt, and, you know. And it's that.
You told me you did own one. You told me.
Oh, I do, but that's only for when I have to work a certain event. But that's when I'm on the sports medicine team for the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. You have to be dressed a certain way.
Whole new story, Rob. Whole new story.
Yeah. Sorry. I got my cowboy hat back there, so I'm good.
I didn't know if we were all going to wear them for this podcast, so I thought about that too. Like, is this all going to be?
I just got this haircut. No. I called the girl that cuts my hair. I'm like, I gotta have a haircut today. You don't understand.
You don't know who I'm hanging out with tonight. Do you know these people, Pip and Rob? Like, do you know them?
But I think it was a lot just the life that they had grown up knowing. That wasn't a normal thing. The gay guy probably in that town probably packed his bags and got out the first chance he got. The gay guy that everyone growing up there knew in high school, I guarantee you. You know, but now that's like one of those areas of Houston too that's developed. Houston's kind of spreading out to and developing. It's coming kind of a suburban area of Houston. So I have friends that live out there now. Like it's, you know, they raise their families because it's out in the country, right? But yeah, back then I think it was an exposure thing, an education thing. You know?
Well, but I think like one of the things that I've taken away from this, you know, with your story so far is that like this happened 20 years ago, and we've come leaps and bounds. Certainly as I would like to think as a society as a whole, but there's still like for that 16-year-old, you know, kid out there, the rookie fireman that's out there, a firefighter who's, you know, trying to figure this out, like that anxiety is still there.
Oh, no.
Even though we've done, because I don't think we've, and that was one of the things that like, which I hope we get out of our conversation tonight is that like they are not hearing the positive stories that are coming out. They like nobody is talking about what it is to be anything in the fire service other than a straight person. And like we need to have that conversation because you're my brother. Like, you know, if we're on the line together, like we're going, like I'm, you know, there is no race, creed, color, religion, beliefs that happen once we put that coat on, or we put that mask on, whatever it is, or the bell goes off, whatever one we want to use. And like I hope that we get that, because that, even though we've come so far, there's still that anxiety for somebody to make that decision and to, you know, finally, I don't know if having the courage to come forward and be comfortable with who they are and let others know is the right way to say it, but like I want them to be able to do that, because I would be so not offended, but I would just be so upset if a coworker of mine didn't tell me something about themselves and didn't become who they were because they were worried about me thinking less of them, you know?
Right. There was a stupid survey out recently. I wish I'd pulled it up, and it said like, I want to say it was like 65% of people are comfortable having an LGBT coworker. And I'm like, what, you know, that's the stupidest stuff you hear, right? You're comfortable with me. You're okay with me coming to work every day because of my life outside this building. And it was I saw it and I laughed. I sent it to a friend. I was like, this is the shit that's wrong and part of my language, but it is. That's what makes it like, oh, it's okay for you to come to work. No, it's okay to come to work because you're a good employee and want to do a job.
You're a human being.
You're not a turd.
Yeah.
And I saw that survey and I was like, that's part of the problem in this nation is things like that. You don't, I feel going up, the blood pressure rising on it. Because when I saw it, I laughed and at the same time thought it was bullshit. Because I also just read an article about I don't know if y'all have heard of the Trevor Project. It's a 24-hour suicide hotline for LGBT youth, and youth they actually go up to the age of 25. The suicide rate for an LGBT youth person is 40% higher. 40%. But now you're telling people that it's okay for you to come to work because 65% of your coworkers or workforce thinks it's okay. That's a problem. You don't put those things. We got to get those numbers down, right? I don't care if you care that I'm gay. I really don't. Unless I don't. And I know you gentlemen from TV don't care, but there's still stupid stuff like those surveys out there. There's not the positive stories. The positive stories are out there. Let me rephrase that. They are. FDNY did a it gets better video, but it was in 2015. There's a group called it's the International Pride Alliance something. I just found out about that, and I was like, how did I just find out about it? And it's a group to help get rid of homophobia in the fire service, police service, first responder. And that's the thing. The positive things aren't out there as much because the negative is easier to focus on. Like they made that 65% sound like, hey, 65%.
Yeah, I think
not too bad.
The way you said it, like this is good. Like it's bad you had to ask that question.
Yes.
And then you're happy that it's like, oh, it's 65%. It's better than 50. We have to be doing something right.
Hey, we were at 55 2 years ago, And I'm sure if I read the article in full, that might have been in there,
I'd rather them ask like, are you happy to come to work? Like you said, a good employee. Like, like how many people are happy to have a good employee next to them? It's probably like 20%. Like it just.
So Dallas, what is it like? When you got to Houston, like when did you come out? Like were you out in Houston or like what was that transition for you? Because I mean, especially coming as a rookie firefighter, like I know how I was like, I'm gonna get fired. I'm gonna screw something up and get fired.
So I did the rookie year, right? I kept my head down, my mouth closed, and I did the typical rookie. Now, like I said, there was a guy in my fire academy who was at my previous job who knew about me. Only guy out of 60 people, right? Who knew about me. And he was cordial, but he didn't say anything during the fire academy about me. But they were hard at Houston's I can't remember the word I'm looking for, but the culture has changed at our fire academy greatly. It's not like what it was when I came in.
Right.
When you would go through the burn, they'd be standing there at the door with your resignation paper going, you want to quit? You can just sign. You can go home right now. You can go back to your burger flipping job. That doesn't happen anymore. But he was in there and I didn't worry about him. But when I hit the station, it was a head down, mouth closed, do what they said, have a broom in your hand if you didn't have a book in your hand kind of thing. And my first station, my captain was getting ready to go to a super slow station. He was off on vacation. He walks in the door and I'm sitting, because they told me to go sit right here, sit here. And I'm like, I'm so being set up. And he comes to the door and he throws that bag down and he drops a slurry of curse words, what are you doing here? Why, because he didn't want a rookie. He was done, right? But he did good. But one thing that was funny, I never brought a girl, right, to anything. And he always would go, I can't wait till I can dance at your wedding. I bet you're going to have the prettiest bride, because it was an assumption, right?
Yep.
Tall, white kid in Texas, he's going to get married, 2 kids, picket fence, goes to the Baptist church on Sunday, votes for George, kind of thing. That's the culture, but
so I don't know. I'm just laughing. We don't know what you're talking about at all. So go on.
So that first year, I just did the rookie year. I seriously did. so I left that station. I got manpowered out of there, and I made really good friends. There, but I never let on who I was. Just because I wanted at that point, because of what got said at me at the other department and someone spreading my business, basically my life, I wanted them to prove who I was before anyone else had a chance to say anything. I was the first one off the truck at the fire. I was the first one off the truck or the engine. We had an engine there. First one off the engine at the EMS call. I had my head buried in the book, studying territory that I didn't even have to study, because I never drove. Stuff. That's what I wanted them to know, that, hey, when this guy shows up at work every day, no matter what goes on when he's at home or in his personal life, that doesn't matter. He's checking the boxes for the good employee. And I don't want to brag on myself, but I had to make sure I was able to brag on myself, through my actions.
No, you were the good rookie, so everybody, for lack of a better term, left you alone. 20 years ago, you were the rookie that did the housework, did the studying.
I was the rookie that fell out at the fire because I allowed myself to overwork. I did. And I remember hot balloon frame, shiplap house over in Denver Harbor. And I just kept going and going. And I remember I just walked out and it was hot. It was a typical Texas day and hot. And I just kept pushing myself. I wouldn't let them put me on let's take a break. Go take a break. No, I just kept pushing. And finally, I just remember I was walking. I just sat down and they were like, "You're done, dude." I learned a lesson there, took it with me, but I would never let another firefighter do that, a rookie or whatever. But, that's how determined I was. I was willing to put harm on myself a little bit, So, but then I left there, I got manpowered to another station. And now this will tie back into Rosenberg a little bit. I'm going to try to deal with this story without dropping people in grease, but there was a person there who worked out near Rosenberg, and he went to Rosenberg Fire Department and said, "Hey, we got one of your former firefighters there. What do you think?" The first thing they told him was, "He's gay." So this is when this is when I decided to stand up for myself a little bit in a different way. So I was sweeping the front hallway one day, and they're all in the office talking, and he goes, "Hey, I went by so-and-so and asked about Cooper." And they're like, "Well, yeah, what'd they say?" And he goes, "Oh, you're not believe this. He's a queer." Country, and in a countryest way. I wish I could repeat it. And I remember just stopping with the broom. They could see me stopping, and they go, "What?" And they go, "Yeah, they said he's gay, this, that, and the other." And "Oh, we got a sissy. Oh, right, we'll show him. He'll either transfer or quit when we're done." There's a whole conversation happened. And I remember standing in that hallway, feeling like I did at that other fire department, and just shaking and thinking, I'm going to run. This is going to be my life forever in this fire, and it's not fun. And I was ready to throw the broom down and run right out the door, down the street, and never come back. Because in my mind, what was happening was they're always going to be talking about you. They're always going to be there. That's always going to be the thing. You're the gay fireman, not the fireman who happens to be gay, And I don't remember what came over me. The voice in the back of my head said, reach down and pull your boots on tight. Don't let them do it. Don't let the guys that picked on you in high school be your bosses now. And shaking, and I can tell you that I was shaking, pushing that broom. And I hit the door, gave a knock, and I said, "Hey, I'm here to empty the trash and take it out." And they just all looked at me like, and they just pointed the can. And I remember I was shaking, holding that bag. They knew I knew. And I walked out, and at some point I was like, screw it. I knew I could get out of there. I wasn't locked into that station. I knew I could get out. I stayed for 1 year exactly. They never taught me anything. They taught me, I take that back. They taught me how not to treat people, because they treated people like crap, if you weren't in the clique. So I learned that. But I remember that moment. And that was the moment when I was like, you know what? Screw those guys. Screw them. I'm gonna get out of here, and someone had already sat me down and said, like, you'll find your clique. I talked to some other firefighters, a gay police officer in HPD, and they'd all been like, "You're going to find your family. You're going to find them. Trust me. You're only in like a year or 2 years at this point. Trust me. It's going to be okay. It's a big department with, trust me, there's lots of assholes, but there's more good people than the assholes in the department." And it did. And I'll never forget that day. And it was a day when I said, you know what? I mean, it was a long day, and it made for really long days there. They prided themselves that they would run people off. That was like a badge of honor. I don't get that. I don't want the guys at my station to leave, as an officer. I want my family, my crew. And I did. I just held my head down and kept pushing forward at that point and decided, you know what, this isn't going to be how it's going to go. Yeah. And it took a little while still. The next station I transferred to, uh, the EO there actually become captain and asked me to come. And I drove over to him and I said, I'm gay if you want me to come work for you. And he was like that. And I said, I'm telling you. And I remember that. And I was very, he goes, yeah, okay, yeah, and he goes like, and I was like, well, I'm telling you I'm gay.
You coming to work next week? Like, you still coming?
Like, yeah, I asked you to come work for me. That doesn't matter. I asked you to come. And I was like, no, I'm telling you. I mean, I was like really determined because
I swear I'm totally gay.
I'm telling you. And he was like, yeah, cool, dude. And then I told him the whole story and he goes, I get it. He goes, big deal, yeah. So, and then, from then on, I've had a couple other instances. Those guys from that station where I went and took the trash out when I transferred to Station 4. Finally, I transferred to Station 4 because that captain left, and I wanted to get back to a truck house. And I transferred to 4. Those guys at the station where I said I'm gonna take the trash out called the captain and told him, and he kind of did like. And I rode over there on extra shifts all the time and stuff. And he, the captain, the senior, he was kind of like, does he show up? They're like, well, yeah, he shows up for work. Does he know his job? Well, yeah, he knows his job. Well, is he a good employee? Does he have anything in his record? And I'm like, well, no. And he's like, what's the deal?
Does he take the trash out? Like, I mean, like, does he take the trash out?
I did the whole, I'm taking the trash out. I can, oh man, you ever tried to empty a trash bag?
But that's so, that's such an epic story though to tell, because look at, like we talked about. So we talked a lot. I don't want to say we talked a lot before this podcast, but we definitely talked more than we have in the past, since however we've known each other, let's say, like leading up to what night are we going to record in this story and that story. And you had said, you want to do this so that that young kid is listening. They know they took the trash out.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I think when you tell that story, I'm like, you took the trash out. Like, that's what I want. I want the guy that takes the trash out.
I did.
And that's you. Who cares?
And you know what I joke? Karma's a bitch, and it's a bitch to the right people. And some of those guys, karma's really got them. And I won't go into any of that because that's that. Yeah. But when I hear their names sometimes, and did you hear? And I'm like, they
didn't take the trash out.
I tried
they probably never took the trash out, Dallas.
Right.
Yeah. Like in Dead Sea, like we can that is the new analogy. Like they probably never did.
Those guys, I was like, if a little kindness and friendliness, their lives wouldn't be going like they are right now. But, and I wish no bad, no harm on everybody. People don't understand that. They're like, people are horrible to you. I go, it'll work out in the wash in the end for them. So, but that was very poignant. I was like, no, I'm telling you I'm gay. And he was like, and he was lifting weights. He's like, yeah, cool. And I went by the station he was working at. He's like, yeah, bro.
Let me do some bicep curls.
Yeah. He was a calendar boy, so at one point,
at one point he was hitting those bicep curls. Little tricep extension this way, like every now and again. Listen, now, see, I'll say it again. Every now and again, that's okay. It's just not your every day. You can't do that every Wednesday. You can't do 20 of these and 30 of these, and it just doesn't work. So.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rob, I hijacked your podcast with fitness.
No. This is just as much yours as it is mine.
I forgot that. It's a crossover episode.
Yes, that's right. It's like one of those horrible shows on TV. We're having a crossover.
We're having a crossover. Jeremy actually tried to talk. Now we're totally hijacking your episode here, Dallas. But Jeremy tried to talk some shit the other day to me about not doing a podcast recently, and I'm like, I'm doing a crossover episode with Robert Ridley from National Fire Radio.
Yeah.
So there.
Yeah,
Jeremy.
You shush.
Yeah.
So now, like moving forward,
right?
As you're in your career, you're promoted to captain. Like, is there? I don't want to say, because I feel like advice is just too but like, what would you say to firefighters, emergency services workers, even probably people in law enforcement who are out there that are like they're starting to walk the path that you had to walk early on in your career,
right?
And even in your life, like, is there a back pocket skill that you have that you developed, or you just say like, hey, like what that one officer said is like, you will find your you will
Yeah.
find your niche, you will find your home.
Yeah.
Like,
And that's what it is. So, I mean, of course, metropolitan big city departments are usually more diverse and more accepting of your smaller, but there are still good small departments out there. But it's getting in there, finding those good people. They accept you who you are because you're a good person who wants to do a great job. And if they happen to know the rest, that's fine. You're always going to have the haters. You're always going to have the naysayers. I still have one. I had right before I got promoted to EO, a guy just trying to go at me about a national night out thing. And he was like, were there women there? Did you get any numbers? And I finally just started screaming. I was like, no, I didn't. I like dudes, man. And I went like this right in front of the whole station. I'm like, 2 dudes. And he just like hit the floor. He was like, oh my God. I go, I don't know why, everybody in the room knows I like dudes. And I screamed it as loud as I could, got in my truck and drove off. You're always going to have those people. That's life. Even outside, we live in a small town. And there's people that look at me and my partner, Mark, at times, we get in this town. Here's funny. In this town, everywhere we go eat dinner, they go one check or two. When we go down to Houston, Austin, they just bring us the check. They up here, it's small town. There's always going to be those people. You just got to find the people who appreciate you for who you are. And I think it does once they realize who you are and learn more about you, they appreciate you even more. My time as an EO to captain at 50s, that's probably the most. My career turned around as EO. When I became an EO, that's when I really found some really cool crews to work with. And I enjoyed my time at Fours, don't get me wrong, but it was it was funny at Fours. My officers were all older, getting ready to retire. They were much more open and accepting of me than the crew. We had a crew member that proudly hung the Confederate flag in his garage, kind of guy. But they were more open to hear about my life. They asked about how Mark was. That's my partner. And all. And as EO, I found crews that were like that. We talk about, and then when we become captain, they always are asking about my stuff. That's the crews you want to find. They appreciate you for the employee first. They understand. And if you get a crew that or a crew or a partner on patrol or on ambulance, that you can open up to and tell your story and tell your story to, it makes you an even tighter bond, an even stronger crew. And so it's about finding it. And they are those people out there. There's always, I had a guy filling it in my station not too long ago. And when he walked in and he saw it was me, he did the whole, and I was like, take it on plugs, dude. Guess who the boss is?
You lose. And
yeah. Oh, he did. He had the most like dejected look because he had talked enough shit about me earlier, and I knew it. And he's just a loudmouth. And I'm like, you've done, you're a 20-year firefighter, dude. You couldn't even promote, and you've tried how many times? And I shouldn't say things like that. Some people just don't think that's good. But I was like, I look at it and I was kind of did the whole, so.
Some days you have to say things like that, though, right?
No, I kept that to myself because I was the officer.
No. You have to think that. I don't know what the word is.
Yeah, no. Oh, yeah. In your head, it's like throw the jab in your head kind of thing.
But I think one of those things too that you said earlier about your academy, where like they were signing, they had the letter at the door, like, oh, here, sign here, Rook, and here, and
yeah,
I've learned being a lieutenant for the past 6 years now, about getting to know your people even more. And this whole, again, social media, National Fire Radio, Size Up, this greater world that's out here has taught me that there's way more to us than just being firefighters. And I want to know about my people. I want to know your partner, Mark. I want to know your wife, Kata.
Molly.
I want to know, I want to know all these things because you're my friend. You're my employee. You're the person I work with. So seeing this change, I think that's another thing. Like you can speak to the folks that were in your boat 20 years ago, but you could also speak to the rest of us, and we can all learn from this, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And that was the big thing is like 20 years ago, there wasn't it was a lot of just keep your head down mentality. Don't let them know who you are. And guys, I think it's a societal change too. One thing about Houston, we're a younger department now. We're very young. When I got in, it was an older department, but we had a huge retirement shift. That out, and a lot of those mentalities. And here's a good example. I called down. I was talking to Luke Manion. He's one of our guys down at Local 341, and I was asking some different things and all. And he said they had a retiree in not too long ago, And he was standing at our pro shop looking at t-shirts and all, and Luke was walking towards him to see if he needed anything. And he said, the guy, and this is, he says, an older gentleman. And he said, he goes, huh. And Luke said, what? And he goes, I never thought I'd see the day that I'd see a pride shirt or hat in our local. And Luke was expecting a rebuttal in a bad way. And he said, huh, times have really changed, haven't they? And he said, the guy just smiled and walked away. And Luke said that was a really good feeling to him to see that from that generation, an older one, that, you know, the times, because he had the feeling that the guy was saying the times have changed for the better. And I think and I know they have. I feel it. I feel it constantly. I mean, there's some things still, I mean, but it's society.
So there's always going to be things. There's things.
There's always going to
read things about racism still. You read things about. I just read a thing the other day about a guy didn't want to work with her because she was a woman and left her in a fire or something that I just read, and I'm like, okay, they're still here, but they're so.
That's a funny thing to say, because like one of my first female captains, everybody was like, "Oh, you can't work for her. You can't work for her. You can't." I said, "I'm not going to be that guy. You know, I cannot be that guy." But I let her prove her path, and we just had a personality. We had a personality disorder. We had.
It's going to happen with anyone. Anyone.
And we did, and I was like, you know, I think I'm just gonna go on down the road because I like my job, and I think you could get me fired. You know, because I have a very also proud personality that because of what I've had to do to get where I'm at, I'm not letting anybody get in the way of that ever again. You know, kind of thing. And I kind of probably should have toned it down a few times in the past, realized this person's on my side. I probably don't, but yeah, I remember that when guys were like, you got to get out of there. You got to get out of there. I'm like, no. And then I was like, yeah, I do. But it's different reasons.
But you all have that issue too. You know what I mean? Like there's that personality issue where you just may not like someone. There's people I work with that like. It's just we're never going to like each other. It's okay.
No, right? No. I mean, even my crew at times, well, not the crew I'm with now, but when I drove the pumper, one of my good friends, Raul Guzman, he's a pipeman, and we butted heads a few times, and but we always came back, and usually we sat and talked about it, and either we realized he didn't understand what I was saying, I didn't understand what he was saying. It was a heat of the moment thing at the fire station. I had high expectations of me as an EO of the guys in the back on all levels, cleaning the station, taking care of the apparatus on the scenes, because my goal, I always said, if I have high expectations, y'all to get that done, I can keep that guy to my right side off y'all's ass, the officer. But we did, it happens, it's life, but you move on, for the bigger picture of things.
Did you have, because I know you mentioned it in the email, but like, were there mentors along the way who really like had that impact on you, whether it just be for your career or for anything else?
I kind of thought about that after I sent that to you. Actually, I thought about today. I didn't really have that mentor that took me under the wing, teach me guys, but I have a lot of people that I just look up to. Because I mean, that I've looked up to, who've paid their way. I mean, that I took lessons from everybody to get me where I am today. I actually texted one the other day and jokingly said, it's actually Clyde Gordon, he's the district chief at Station 8. And I said, hey, made a first in fire the other day. And remember that little nugget you talked about where when smoke's banked down, pushing out the door, get down as slow as you can, look under the fire, you're looking for the victim, but you'll probably see the fire and see where all the furniture is. I said, I put it to use and it worked. I said, when you think I was running my mouth, not listening, I was paying attention. So he's one, Chief Phil Bariski, he was the fire chief of Houston at one time. Man, that guy, he taught you learn everybody's story before you cast judgment. You never know what's happening when they drive out of that parking lot, and go home for the day. He was big on that. I mean, I could go on and on. Kim Phillips, I gotta give credit to her. She's that loudmouth female in the fire department that's not going to take no for an answer. And she's gonna, if you tell her no, she's gonna come back and tell you why no is wrong. She's a very good friend of mine. We share, I'm a gardening tips and all that all the time, and different stuff. But I mean, I could go on with the people I've learned from the fire service. There are guys that get lucky in Houston and they get that mentor because they don't get transferred out. They don't get manpowered out. They're not in a time where in a major hiring and they're trying to shuffle the city and get it right. And they get to stay at the station, just work with that guy and work with that guy and work with that guy. For me, I didn't get that. I got shipped out. And then I got to that second station where I was like, okay, these guys aren't who I need to work with in my career. And then I went on and worked with a friend of mine, Don Stamps. He's the one that asked me to come be on his shift at Station 60. And he's the one I was like, I'm telling you, I'm gay, you know, and all. He recently, unfortunately, passed away, but man, he's the guy. So my class, 4 months after graduating academy, we had a line of duty death of one of our classmates, died in a nightclub fire. But Don was the guy that put me back on the bicycle, start pedaling again, keep going, because I was 4 months in and you lose a guy in your class. I mean, you know, that's pretty shocking, right? You know, it's shocking to lose a firefighter. We hate it every time it happens. I mean, it never gets easy. But to have that guy that graduated 4 months ago, you're the shield of rookie, you know, but Don was the guy that, you know, he pulled me aside one day. He could see it. He could feel it, right?
Yeah.
And said, you know, when you fall off the bicycle, you get back on. And he did that. And I think I'm here today a lot because of him, because I kept going. So.
Well, I think that's one thing too. Like you talk about the culture and the traditions that are in Houston, and like, you know, like I think that Houston has become the best kept fire department secret in the United States in some aspects of it, right?
Oh
But
no,
like,
yeah.
but like, there's been like that path has been paved with like the sacrifice of some very good firefighters, and
Yes.
you know, it's like you guys have had to go through
Yeah.
a lot of funeral details as a result.
Yeah.
So
No, no. And we were going through it like a 1-2 punch, like it just was kept
yep.
happening. It wasn't, you know, the minute you come up for air kind of thing, here to come again for a while. And that was hard too on a new firefighter. You know, you're battling the mental aspect of being a gay firefighter, right? You know, you're the gay firefighter. Well, just go do your job, don't say anything. And then you're battling the mental health issue over here, what's happening with PTSD, and we're dying, and you have nobody to go talk to balance these out. There's no support service. You got to go to I went to the counseling center and spoke to a counselor, an LGBT counselor, but they didn't know anything about the fire service. They didn't know. I was telling them stuff, and they're like, "Oh, they're taking notes about trying to learn." I'm like, "This is this is my 45 minutes," and you know, and
Yeah.
but there's nothing there to support those two, unfortunately. I mean, I think the best thing is, you know, I had a young fireman. He's since left Houston. His partner contacted me and he goes, "Can I talk to you?" And I was like, yeah, I'm here for you. And he goes, "I don't understand this culture." He said, "I don't get this. I don't get he's coming home this way. I don't get the moodiness. I don't get the," and he was a rookie in his rookie year still. I feel like this young kid, and his partner was just blown away. There's support services for wives, the fire wives, you know, there's all that. They always talk about a lot of these things. Our union even had an organization at one time. It's since been disbanded, but it was the Fire Wives Auxiliary. Well, not everybody has a wife, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the women in the fire?
Fire.
What about the women in the fire service, right?
Their husbands. Yeah.
Yeah, the husbands. And so that was where he reached out to me, and I was like, I've never thought of that, you know. And it was really, and I had some great long conversations with him and explained, you know, my years and what I'd gone through, how you have to separate the work. It's going to take him a little time. He's new to learn this and all. But I said, yes. He goes, well, he's ready to come out to his crew. And I go, if he thinks there's that person in that crew that he can do it to. And then they told me the crew, and I was like, yeah, just do it. You know, I knew the crew, and I'm like, just do it.
Yeah.
And you know, but there are some crews in the city. I'd be like, hey, you know, pick that one person you can comment on. Just leave that to yourself. You know, there's some good old boy crews. It's Houston, Texas. You know.
There's a lot going on there that's different.
Oh my God.
New Jersey.
I mean, you can literally go to one station on one shift, be like, man, those are the coolest guys in the world. They were great to hang. I worked on an all Hispanic crew at one time. And that was the best time I had in my life. I ate way too many tacos. We had tacos all the time. I'm glad I'm not on that shift. I've lost weight. Guzman, I love your cooking if you listen to this, but my God, man, you were killing me with the lard. But then you could drive right down the street 2.5 miles and meet the most conservative, boring, country redneck crew that all they want to sit around is watch Fox News, and they probably know who I'm talking about, but they listen to this because I doubt anyone will, but that's all they do all day, you know. And every social problem is that person's problem. The racism is the black people's problem. The equality is the gay people's problem. Nothing has to do with them, kind of thing. So
yeah.
That's Houston. It's so diverse, you know. But
I feel like though,
that makes it great.
That's the
To some
country,
extent.
though. That's the country in a way, right? That's the fire service where it's
Oh,
so
yeah.
diverse. And
Yeah.
I even told you how, you know, on social media, I get messages all the time. And one started out just as innocently as all the other ones type do about fitness or something. And this man said to me that he wanted to come out to his crew and said, like, I've happened to see you hang out with some homosexual people and I thought you'd be a good person to come out to. And I'm like, wait, this is all messaging. And I'm like, time out. Wait, what did you just say? And on in my couch here in New Jersey, I'm showing my wife Tracy. I'm like, Tracy, what do I do? What do I do? I don't even know this person. And he now chosen me to do this with and wants to know advice. I'm like, I don't have advice to give him. Like, what do I do? And we talked some more and things worked out well for him. But it's one of those things that this is new and this is interesting for me. Not interesting, I shouldn't say, it's a bad word, but this is something new for everyone.
It's uncharted territory.
It is, yeah. And you have to be ready for it. You have to be willing to unchart it, right? That's the key.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you like go to Google right now and you put LGBT firefighters in, you're not going to find a lot. You're going to find some article, some of the fire magazines had some guys write in some different things, and somebody answered the question, and I'm curious as who answered that. Was that someone that's had experience? Was that just somebody, what was that, Nozzlehead or something? It was one of the advice columns you can kind of write. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot.
There was like an you didn't have to sign the letter thing in one of the magazines a few years ago.
So this guy wrote this letter and I read it and I'm like, well, who's this guy? I mean, he gave some good advice. It's not the advice I'd have given if this young person had come to me, so there's not a lot out there. It is uncharted territories. It's small. It's like talking about corporations in June. What do corporations do when June starts rolling around? They start slapping that pride sticker on everything, right? You start seeing it. It's funny. If you look at UPS with their big pride sticker, but you go to UPS in the Middle East, they're not doing it over there. It's very, very catered to. So that's why it's an uncharted territory. It's a convenient territory for some places sometimes, a lot of times. And it makes you wonder if in those articles, it was just like, oh, this is a good time to do this,
And that was one of the other things that I didn't want to just like come up with a pride logo for National Fire Radio and be like, hey, this is what we're doing. We support, and it's
gone after June 4th. It's already a past post,
Right. And then if we change the profile picture, it lasts until July 3rd because I'll forget to take it down. But whatever else, it's just that's not to I don't want to say that's not the way to that's one part in the way, but that's not the only way of what we're trying to do.
Dallas didn't even know this, but when before I asked you to do this with us, that was what Rob said to me. Was like, I don't want to just say June is Pride. Let's do this for Pride. I want to talk about this, and I want to make this what we're talking about. I don't know how to say it in any other way, but I agree because it's June, and it just so happened to be June that we came up with this.
It probably pinged on your radar a little bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good thing. It needs to be talked about. There's a lot of things in the fire service that need to be talked about more to make them where they're not uncomfortable subjects for people. I don't think this is an uncomfortable subject for people, but this is my life. It's a little different story. I kind of live the life now like, well, if you're uncomfortable, this fire station has 5 rooms and I have my own office, so you're free to go to any of them, but you will be on the fire truck when it goes out the door. You can pick the locker room, you can pick the toilets, you can pick whatever. I don't care, but it's not an issue.
So we've been talking for about almost coming up onto an hour and a half. Is there anything else that you want to touch on, plug, anything like that, as far as I know you talked about the
I have the website. It's the International EMS and Firefighters Pride Alliance, and I find it a little interesting after you said it, and then I googled it and looked, but EMS is first. That is very not the norm in the fire service, right?
No.
Fire EMS. I say it all the time. It's EMS and fire. So this was an organization that was probably bred out of that EMS community that we already talked about.
And they're out of San Francisco. So that, I mean, that's not anything. They're in the Castro. And so my partner, Mark, lived in San Francisco for 13 years. And we go back every September for a couple of weeks. I'm like, how did I never know this? How did I never find this? And so San Francisco Fire Department, you know, it's EMS fire, and then you can pathway into fire. So I'm sure their EMS side has a high, I shouldn't say high. I know the word I'm trying to get to here, but I'm sure they yeah, that's a lot. I'm just gonna let this go because I'm getting so tongue tied. Yeah, so out there maybe it is, but I was really interested. They have a big like conference and all, so I kind of may try to go to it.
Convergence 2021, yeah. October 8th to the 10th in Denver, Colorado.
I know. I was like, that sounds like a great time to go to Denver.
Oh, I could go to Denver and finally see Denver for once.
Yeah.
I just went to a wedding and we were out there and we were so busy we didn't get to see anything other than the wedding venue. So
yeah, that was like us in Palm Springs. I was like, we were in Palm Springs for a wedding, and I was like, we're staying a few more days. I'm like, you got to call in sick to work. I'm not. Because we got there and I was like, this is amazing. You know.
And since we're plugging these folks too, you can enter the raffle to go to the conference for free. So if you go to the website, there is a raffle. You have till August 31st, 2021. We know firefighters love free stuff. So there's a chance to get a free trip to Denver out of the International, and I got to pull it back up again because I'm going to say it wrong, right? But International EMS and Fire Pride Alliance. We don't even know, but we just plugged them.
Yeah. So Dallas, do you have anything else for us?
You know, I'll just kind of end it. You know, someone one time, and there's I could look it up, and there's a great poem on. It's like, why do we come out? And you know, why do you have to come out? I didn't come out for you guys. I don't come out for the guys that are talking shit, the protesters on the corner. I come out for that kid we've talked about. Yeah, I've come out so they can see me. I come out so they can hear my struggles, to know that it's okay. It's going to be tough, but it gets 100% better. You know, it's been the greatest career of my life, my greatest job. I've made my best friends. And if you're thinking of doing it, I'll put my Instagram tag up there. People have questions and all.
What's your Instagram tag?
It's the Dallas Cooper. It's at the Dallas Cooper. But you know, I get pretty emotional when I think about where I was, and I look back and see that guy standing in that fire station, thinking all they could tell you was I'm gay. But now, you know something. If that's all they can tell you, well, they're not paying attention. So that's it. You know, we don't do it for anybody but that guy, that kid that's sitting there, doesn't have the support of parents, that doesn't have the support of family. I hate saying the support of church, but I'll even say it. They don't have that. I came out when I had to, and I'm out. I'm very proud of who I am and what I've done with my life. And just know that, you know, if you're thinking about joining the fire service, you're not alone. You're not the only guy out there. 4,000 firemen I shouldn't say firemen. I got corrected on this the other day. 4,000 firefighters in the city of Houston. I tried to write down how many I thought I knew, and I came up with about 20, but I've only worked in one little pocket of the city for a long time. So I told that to one of the guys. He goes, oh, no. He goes, we could have a party. And I'm like, well, okay.
When I asked you, you started naming them, and I'm like, wait, how many? Because I'm like, I know how many we have in my little department. You started naming people. I'm like, no, there's got to be more than that.
No, there are, but like I said, I mean, I've worked the northwest side of Houston almost my whole career, and that's it. You know, I kind of just know who I interacted with, or someone's told me, you know, oh, do you know? I always like when people do this. Oh, do you know so and so's gay? I'm like, no.
You don't just automatically.
Hold on, let me get my directory out. How did I miss that one? You know,
I was just gonna say, like, you just don't get this magic book that says like it's all these guys.
I did not receive an email when he joined. You know?
Yeah. That was not in the questionnaire.
I must have missed that in my club. Sorry. I do think too. Wait, Rob, real quick too. Dallas said this to me when we were talking. That one time there was a story in Houston where a captain didn't want to go to the Pride Parade.
Oh,
And then they told him, they basically said, like, well, then don't go. Like, we're taking the engine, it's in service. You stay here, we're going, because that's what the rule was or whatever it was. And then when the engine came back, everyone was so happy that they went because they had such a good time. And this poor, I don't want to say poor guy, but this guy who chose not to go stood there with his hands crossed, like, oh, well, I missed a good time. Like,
because like the city of Houston, they don't like, you won't see anything on the website, right? You won't see like Sacramento has a pride flag, San Francisco, Oakland, Seattle, Washington. I could go on. So they don't do that. But if they need a fire truck for a parade or a ladder truck, they'll check that box off. Whichever parade, as long as it's socially acceptable, they'll happily send a truck with a crew. And yeah, he did. And the guys came back and they had confetti and beads, and the truck was covered in stuff, and because he wasn't going because he didn't believe in homosexuals and this, that, and the other, and how dare they try to force him. And the chief was like, and I think his chief was gay. I may have been his chief, one of the, a district chief we had. I think I could be wrong on that, but yeah, it was like, just sit at the station, dude.
You'd be miserable by yourself.
You showed them. Yeah. You go yeah. But it was
hope they run a fire.
Yeah. It was so funny. The guys, on beads and all kinds of stuff. Because I had a friend that was there, and he was like, it was the best time ever. I'm going to that parade every year. Because it's fun. Our parade's at night down here. So, it's at night in June. So you lose about 30 pounds just standing there in the heat. So, anyways.
Well, Dallas, thank you for, and I mean, honestly, thank you for coming on
no
and opening up and trusting us with this story, because this has been like a great time for me. Like I've really enjoyed listening to you to talk and just kind of going over this. And I hope that there's somebody out there who comes across this and, they, like we talked about it before, if there's that one person that we make the difference to, then tonight was a success. And on behalf of myself and everybody at National Fire Radio and Pip with the Size Up, thank you for coming on. This has been an honor. So
it's 100% an honor for me. When Pip asked me, I immediately said no in my head, and then and then I thought about it, and I thought about that kid. I thought about the young Dallas. Which I get emotional thinking. Thank you all again. It's been an honor.
Well, everybody, this is Rob, National Fire Radio, with Pip from the Size Up and Captain Dallas Cooper from Houston Fire Department. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in this week and listening to another episode on the National Fire Radio podcast channels. We truly appreciate the support. We thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen to our interviews, our roundtables, our discussions. It means the world. Like, share, leave a comment. The more we engage, the more we can grow and push the word out and keep making this job better.